If you are familiar with investing in the stock market, then you are probably familiar with the term index funds. But have you ever stopped to think about how they came about, how they work, and most importantly, how can investing in them benefit you? These and a few more things are what I would like to talk about today. So sit down, relax, and let me tell you all about them. Welcome to The Eighth Wonder, a channel dedicated to making compound interest your best interest. To start off, the very first thing you need to know when it comes to index funds is a name. Whose name, you may ask? The name Jack Bogle. John C. Bogle, commonly known as Jack Bogle, was an American investor, businessman, and philanthropist. He founded the Vanguard Group, one of the world's largest investment management companies. In 1975, he launched the Vanguard 500 Index Fund, which was the first mutual fund to track the performance of a broad stock market index, specifically the S&P 500. A stock market index is a statistical measure that represents a specific segment of the stock market or the overall market as a whole. This innovative approach allowed individual investors to gain exposure to the overall market without having to pick individual stocks or pay high fees associated with actively managed funds. Bogle believed in the philosophy of passive investing, which involves holding a diversified portfolio of securities that closely mirrors a market index rather than trying to beat the market through active stock selection. He argued that most actively managed funds failed to perform their benchmarks consistently and that high fees eroded investors' returns over time. Bogle's emphasis on low-cost and long-term investing helped popularize index funds, making them a cornerstone of many individual and institutional investment portfolios.
There's one more person I would like to introduce to you today, and I'm quite sure he's here. I haven't seen him, but I understood he was coming. There's I believe that he's made it today, and that is Jack Bogle, who I talked about in the annual report. Jack Bogle has probably done more for the American investor than any man in the country. And Jack, could you stand up? There he is. Jack Bogle, many years ago, he wasn't the only one that was talking about an index fund, but it wouldn't have happened without him. I mean, Paul Samuelson talked about it, Ben Graham even talked about it, but the truth is it was not in the interest of the investment industry of Wall Street. It was not in their interest actually to have the development of an index fund, the index fund, because it brought down fees dramatically. And as we've talked about some in the reports and other people have commented, index funds overall have delivered for shareholders a result that has been better than Wall Street professionals as a whole. And part of the reason for that is that they brought down the costs very significantly. So when Jack started, very few people, certainly Wall Street, did not applaud him. And he was the subject of some derision and a lot of attacks. And now we're talking trillions when we get into index funds, and we're talking a few basis points when we talk about investment fees in the case of index funds, but still hundreds of basis points when we talk about fees elsewhere. And I estimate that Jack, at a minimum, has left in the pockets of investors without hurting them overall in terms of performance at all, gross performance. He's put tens and tens and tens of billions into their pockets, and those numbers are going to be hundreds and hundreds of billions over time. So it's Jack's 88th birthday on Monday. So I just say happy birthday, Jack, and thank you on behalf of American investors. And Jack, I've got great news for you. You're going to be 88 on Monday, and in only 2 years you'll be eligible for an executive position at Berkshire. So hang in there, buddy.
That clip is from the 2017 Berkshire Hathaway shareholder meeting. Warren Buffett speaks very highly of Jack Bogle and how he revolutionized the world of investing by making sure that investors have more of their returns coming back to them instead of going towards fees from actively managed funds. An index fund is a type of mutual fund. Mutual funds are investment vehicles that pool money from multiple investors to invest in a diversified portfolio of securities such as stocks, bonds, and other assets. They are managed by professional fund managers who make investment decisions on behalf of investors. The difference when it comes to index funds is that their aim is to replicate the performance of specific market index such as the S&P 500 or the Dow Jones Industrial Average. These funds are designed to passively track the underlying index by holding a diversified portfolio of securities that closely mirrors the index composition. This in turn allows them to be cheaper because they aren't actively managed. Index funds are essentially baskets of stocks that allow you to own a piece of everything in the basket by buying the basket itself. So instead of buying a lot of shares of a lot of companies, you can buy into an index fund which will give you a small ownership of each of the companies in the index. The most popular index fund is the S&P 500, which tracks the top 500 companies in the United States by market capitalization and gives you a return based on the average return of all the companies combined. It has returned an annualized return of 10.13% per year from the time it was established. It is a benchmark against which all the other performances are measured. And speaking of the S&P 500, here's another clip from Warren Buffett talking about the index.
I think it's the same thing that makes most sense practically all of the time, and that is to consistently buy an S&P 500 low-cost index fund. Keep buying it through thick and thin, and especially through thin, because the temptation gets, when you see bad headlines in newspapers, maybe to say, well, maybe I should skip a year or something. Just keep buying it. American business is going to do fine over time. So you know the investment universe is going to do very well. The Dow Jones Industrial Average went from 66 to 11,497 in one century, and then since that century has ended, it's more or less doubled again. American business is going to do well. The trick is not to pick the right company; it's to be, because most people aren't equipped to do that, and plenty of times I make mistakes on that. The trick is to essentially buy all the big companies through the S&P 500, and to do it consistently, and to do it in a very, very low-cost way, because costs really matter in investments. If returns are going to be 7 or 8%, and you are paying 1% for fees, that makes an enormous difference in how much money you have on retirement.
At the annual meeting for Berkshire Hathaway this year, you introduced a special guest to the audience of 40,000 shareholders who were watching. It was Jack Bogle. Why did you want to recognize Jack Bogle?
I think Jack Bogle has done more for American investors than any other person connected with Wall Street or the investment process, because he, with a number of other people, he came up with the idea of the index fund. He wasn't the sole thinker behind it, but he was the guy that implemented it and crusaded for it. But now there's trillions of dollars in low-cost index funds. Those people are going to have better lives. They're going to have better retirements. Their kids are going to inherit more money because of Jack Bogle and his efforts.
Warren Buffett here gives a simple strategy that anyone can follow in order to see good returns on their investments. He suggests that you consistently invest in the S&P 500 index. I would like to point out how he said that you should do so through thick and thin, and especially through thin. That's actually when you will make the most returns, because you'll be buying at an even lower price because the markets will generally be down. This goes very well with what he had to say about having low-cost index funds, which are more beneficial to the investor as a lot of the management fees get done away with. He talks of how Jack Bogle has done the greatest thing for investors in creating index funds, and how people will have more money left over from the investments due to his work. There's an even cheaper and simpler version of index funds in the form of exchange-traded funds, or ETFs for short. For normal index funds, you would have to go through a management company like Vanguard or Charles Schwab in order to buy in. But ETFs can be bought on any investment platform and can be bought and sold like stocks. They also carry a small management fee, but it is lower than that of index funds for the most part. With index funds, there's usually a minimum investment price set by the investment management company, which does not apply when it comes to ETFs. At the end of the day, you will have to decide which one works best for you and then apply Warren Buffett's strategy of buying consistently. He talked about how this would allow you to be able to get good results without having to try and figure out what the best company to buy is. A very interesting thing about index funds is how companies in the index are weighted, and how companies that no longer meet the requirements needed for them to be in the index get dropped and replaced with new ones that meet the criteria.
Of all the things that have happened since 1942, we've had 14 presidents, 7 Republicans, 7 Democrats. We've had world wars. We had 9/11. We had the Cuban Missile Crisis. We have all kinds of things. The best single thing you could have done on March 11th, 1942, when I bought my first stock, was just buy an index fund and never look at a headline, never think about stocks anymore, just like you would do if you bought a farm. You just buy the farm and let the tenant farmer run it for you. And I pointed out that if you'd put $10,000 in an index fund that reinvested dividends, and I paused for a moment to let the audience try and guess how much it'd amount to, and it would come to $51 million now. And the only thing you had to really believe in then is that America would win the war and that America would progress as it has ever since 1776, and that American business, if America moved forward, American business would move forward. You didn't have to worry about what stock to buy. You didn't have to worry what day to get in and out. You didn't know the Federal Reserve would exist, whatever it might be. And America works.
This is truly remarkable. A simple strategy like consistently buying into an index fund, holding it for the long term, and reinvesting dividends can give you such great returns. This means that the earlier you start and the more you can afford to put in, especially when the market is down, the more returns you will see. Earlier on, I mentioned that the S&P 500 is the benchmark that is used to measure all other performances, and the truth is, you barely ever have investors or even fund managers that beat its performance. In fact, in 2007, Warren Buffett made a famous bet. He wagered $1 million that an S&P 500 index fund, which represents the overall market, would outperform a selection of actively managed hedge funds over a 10-year period. Buffett chose a low-cost index fund, especially the Vanguard 500 index fund at Miro Shares, as his contender. He challenged any hedge fund manager to pick a portfolio of hedge funds that they believed would outperform the index fund. At 10 years, in 2017, Buffett's index fund had gained a compounded annual return of 7.1%, while the hedge fund selected by protege partners, the opposing party, achieved only 2.2% on average. Buffett won the bet convincingly, and the outcome reinforced his belief in the superiority of low-cost passive index funds. Buffett's challenge highlights his skepticism about active fund managers who charge high fees for their expertise but often fail to generate consistently better returns than low-cost index funds. He believes that most investors would be better off investing in low-cost, broadly diversified index funds that provide exposure to the overall market and require little active management. So if you're looking for an easy and reliable way of investing, follow the advice of the Oracle of Omaha, Warren Buffett, and you won't go wrong. The next time you invest in an index fund or ETF, remember the name Jack Bogle and how he was instrumental in making that a reality. Jack Bogle passed away in January of 2019 at the age of 89, and this is what Warren Buffett had to say about him. A lot of Wall Street is devoted to charging a lot for nothing. He charged nothing to accomplish a huge amount. If there's one way of honoring Jack Bogle and his legacy, it is by building up your own legacy by investing passively in index funds for the long term. And just like that, you now know about index funds, how they came about, how they work, and how you can benefit from investing in them. Are you currently invested in any index funds? Will you be starting on that journey? What is the most attractive thing to you about index funds? Comment below and let me know. I hope you found value in this video. If you did, then hit the like button and share it with a friend. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and click on the notification bell so you stay informed and you can keep learning all these great lessons. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you on the next video. But until then, stay invested.